like I say, the safety, the security, this illusion in our mind, because we're addicted to feeling good. So when something is uncomfortable, we resist and we close, push it away, and we go into the safety again. Like we go back in the hen house. Like, how long you want to stay in the hen house? Like repeating and doing the same things over and over and over. And when you go past this, there's something inside you saying, I desire something new. And this world is so in that safety, security, and the hypnosis that sort of takes us down these different paths and trying to understand that. And so me and Cindy were discussing a lot of that this morning, because she was talking about how she's recognizing things and seeing it, and then she would talk it out with me and see where her mind is or whatever's her internal different things.
Yeah, last night I watched V is for Vendetta again, and it was like, holy crap, like even more, like I didn't understand that, or like just there's an awakening that the Evie has in the movie, and she lets go of all her fear. And when she lets go of all her fear, she welcomes death. And once she does that, she's so being fearless, she is not swayed to be emotional, to be afraid, in going into protection and safety. And she was able to become one with everything in essence of it. So she went outside and she stepped into the rain and she said, God is in the rain. And when she said that, and it's like she became one with everything, she was free. So she freed herself of her fear of death, her fear of persecution. And she went into the world and survived just fine. It's like, how come you never got caught? And it's like, because I wasn't afraid anymore. So it's like, where will you get out of your comfort zone and allow yourself to be free? And how long will you stay within that safety of that confine of the beliefs that you hold within yourself when it comes to, like, what started it this morning was also relationships, or my beliefs in what a relationship or what a partner is supposed to look like and do. And yeah. So getting out and being brave and doing things like go on a date with someone like Joe. That, like when I started the relationship with Joe, he was everything I did not understand. So it's like, what? I don't know how to do this. And it was a learning. I had to get out of my comfort zone, learn to undo some old patterns, and then step into some new ones, or some new ideas and thoughts. And my world opened with it, like with that uncomfortable bit, because not everything is comfortable and blissful all the time. And if you're looking for blissful all the time, where's the lesson that's learned? And it was it's like there's a separation that can happen from the goal if you're just looking for the happy in everything that you do, and you're afraid of things that are uncomfortable. So you stay in the hen house. When you look at it, it's like it's an external where it's always somebody else. Like it's Joe is the one that's got problems here. It's like, and then I'm like, okay, well, how do I adjust to Joe's problems or whatever? But then I realize that he may have a problem with my pattern of manipulating him to do the dishes the way I want him to do the dishes. And he's like, he just allows me to discover that I can let go of my need to manipulate him to do the dishes the way that I want him to do the dishes. And so I'm the one that changes that belief that the dishes have to be done that certain way. Like this is just a small example. We can get really deep into bigger things where it's, I can shift and I can change, and it can be a harmonious relationship, whereas then he can still do the dishes the way he wants to do the dishes, and everything is okay. I don't have to change him.
So the thing of being in the uncomfortable is where all our answers are. It's part of, like, when we're children, everything is a challenge, like learning the language, learning words, learning how to operate on this planet, what is right, what is wrong. And you're in the uncomfortable, and the idea is asking questions, making choices, and learning. It's like your parents will say, well, don't put your hand on that object, it's going to burn you. And the child keeps thinking, and then they finally put their hand on it, it burns them, and then they realize and they never do it again. But they had to go through that uncomfortable to realize what getting burnt from a hot object is. So when they see the stove and that, they know stay away a little bit so you don't get burned or hurt. And as adults, we go into these comfort. It's like I have a lot of friends who want to be in bliss all the time, and I'm like, why? It's like, what for? So they create these little worlds that they're in, and they try to be in this bliss. And I'm like, there's more to life than just being in this bliss. There's all kinds of things in living and going out and doing things. It's like energy for me comes in, leaves, comes in, leaves. I don't really try to be in that big energy. When it comes in, sometimes it'll stay for a period of time and then it leaves. Then we just get on with our thing. And me and Cindy's energies go up and down in different ways. And there's an uncomfortable sometimes that comes in, and it's something that we need to look at. And sometimes it's just compromising because it's just inside ourselves, and we let go of a certain energy, and then everything settles down. We feel good. And it's like, but if it's pulling you and it's challenging you, then it's like, okay, what is in me that's doing that? Because a lot of things are something that we may have activated as a childhood. We thought, well, when I grow up, I don't want a person that does these certain things, or, has a hairstyle a certain way or whatever. And every time you see that, you get irritated. But it was the child deciding this, and it carries an energy. So recognizing these internal things sometimes has really got nothing to do with the outside. It's something wanting to change inside, or your values, your beliefs. Like Cindy's mind is expanding and opening more, reading this Neville Goddard book, and it's taking her in because she's really contemplating these things. Like before I tell her things and I'm like, well, think about this, and she'd say, yep. And then she let it go. And then later, month later, she's like, hey, Joe, what was that you told me I need to think about? And I'd bring it up and I talk about it. And then she'd go, oh, yeah, yep. And then she'd forget about it. But now she's actually recognizing things and taking that internally, and it's taking her deeper. And she's becoming conscious of her mind. To be conscious of who she is, how she fits into the reality, and where those uncomfortables are. But she's not trying to be in the bliss. Like there's times where it's like, okay, all day we just want a big party, we want to blow up balloons and run around and just be in this really, really happy place. But in reality, there's many circumstances, many things. And it's like, how do you still keep living in the uncomfortable? How do you keep moving forwards and allowing all the changes?
I'm thinking, I mean, at some point you have to have periods of experiencing bliss. Otherwise it becomes a torture. If you're constantly learning, you exhaust yourself. I mean, there has to be some point of reward of what you've learned, right? That you feel comfortable with that for a while until you move on to the next thing. And the next thing I was thinking, if you're constantly flexible in the sense of learning, okay, I'm going to learn it, but at the same time, you're compromising with your own views of the world constantly. There's a very fine line between compromising your values and learning in order to, because you believe that somebody knows better than you.
Yeah, being malleable and open. It's like me, it's like learning different things and going, oh, well, this doesn't fit in. I'm starting to realize that there's something that I need to change again. And it's been a lifetime of that. My granddad was really on that when I was a child, because he would challenge me to a lot of things and what kind of beliefs I had, because my mind was just starting to rationalize a lot of things. And I was so curious about so many things. And I would hear something from somebody and I would take that viewpoint, and he would go, well, you tell me about it. So I sit there and I'd explain it to him. And then he'd go, well, I want you to go to this old man, ask him this, and I want you to go to this old lady. So when he said that, away I would go. I go to the old man, I'd knock on the door, they'd ask me to come in, and then they're like, what do you want? And I'd say, my granddad told me to ask you this. And I would sit down and allow them to explain and tell me all their different versions and theories to whatever that was. Then I'd thank him, and then I would go off to the old lady, and the same thing would happen. And then after it all, I would go back to my granddad, and he'd say, okay, now, what do you think now? And he would have me explain a little bit about the old man, the old woman, and what this person told me before, to see if I can recognize the bigger and release that. So it was always a real learning to adjust and be open to many things. And the universe has surprised me many times throughout my life. And I'm going along and I'm like, oh yeah, I really know this. I got it. And then bam, everything goes nuts. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. I realized I didn't get it. And there's something a lot more bigger, and it expands. Some of our thoughts are way bigger and deeper. We haven't gotten to that point of holding that energy of how big and deep that is. So that uncomfortable is one of the most amazing things. And if you really recognize it, you can just move through things like super, super amazing.
But then also in the right time for yourself too, just because Joe says, Cindy, like we were talking and he's like, you should think about this or whatever. And then I'm like, okay. And then I forget about it. A month later, I ask him the same thing. I'm doing it on my timeline when my mind wants to go there. I'm not trying to force myself just because Joe has said, do this. I'm like, okay, I got to do that. And everything else is to stop, which is nice because there's that, you honor yourself when you follow your flow. And because I get my answers, not just from Joe, like I get some answers and I get some questions, and there's energies that come in when it comes to conversing with Joe. But in the books that I'm reading or in the movie that I'm watching, like I was just saying, V for Vendetta, I got a bunch of answers that were relevant to the sort of questions I was asking here the last couple of days. And allowing yourself for those things to come in from alternate means. That's not just one person, like putting them up on the pedestal that they have all their answers. It's within you to also absorb those answers, to ponder those questions, to take it deeper. How deep do you want to go with it? And when do you need a break? And just like Joe says, be the human, like go hang out in the hen house, be comfortable, be safe. Like you said, that reward of when you nail something, you're just like, okay, and now you take a rest from things for a while. You're not just like 100% on all the time.
Yeah, it's really true. But that's where, like Cindy, she'll ask the universe a question, or inside, or she'll ask me. And then later she'll go to what do you like watching on the TikTok. And all of a sudden something will pop up and it'll sort of answer her question, or for some reason she'll put on a certain program or movie, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, because the universe is very spontaneous. And if you're really, really paying attention, you start catching all these little answers and these little things, because it does that. It tries to see how aware you're really being. And if you recognize you've received an answer, and then maybe it'll give you something to distort it a little bit to make you think. And then later it'll give you another answer that will expand it, or it'll take you deeper in, because Cindy can get into this. I like when she gets into this and she gets stay on something for about a week. It's really, really cool, because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and more energy comes in. And sometimes I start channeling and it just stuff comes in for like an hour and it's just flowing. And after it's done, I was like, whoa, that was like so cool. And it wasn't something I really expected. We're just bantering and talking and sharing things. And I like it too, because she challenges me. Sometimes she'll put up her defense walls and she's got her mitts up and she's like, okay, I'm ready to go fist the cup. And I'm like, okay, back up a little bit here. Let's figure this out. And it's good because it allows me to look at my internal stuff too and see things and others. And if I really am in alignment, or I'm trying to hold or push something maybe, and she's breaking through that. So I have to allow for those things to go on and allow me to go into my uncomfortable, because I need to go in there too. And lots of times I can just ask the universe and get the answer. And I'm like, it just comes in and I'm like, oh, that's the answer. Okay. So the universe will put a challenge, somebody or something, situation there, to put me into an uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, I am here now. So what do I need to do to release or step through or into another thing? And it's recognizing that. And for children, it's amazing how easy they can do it, but we condition ourselves to be either blissful or happy, and it's not always about that. Sometimes we need to seek that little bit uncomfortable to find some stuff where the universe brings it in some way, and then just recognize and go, oh, and realize what it is and step past it.